Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back with the BBC. As you can see here, we're looking at a speech kit. Now, this came from retroclinic.com. I've been meaning to give this company a shout out a number of times and I just kept forgetting. So they sell all sorts of different upgrades and mods and spares and things, for the BBC. I got my replacement video ULA from Mark actually at the Retro Clinic. So yeah, check out their website. I'll stick links down below, but you can see it there, retroclinic.com. So this was a kit which was available on eBay. You'll probably get it a bit cheaper direct from the site, obviously because you're going to have eBay fees. Now I've got an extra chip here. This is what I got from China, so I'll just put that there for the sec. It came with the C version, which I'll talk about in a sec. So the kit comprises of the TMS-5220, and in the case here he sent me the C revision, which is quite nice. That was the slightly newer revision than the original ones that perhaps would have gone into a beam. And you get this TMS-6100 emulator here. Now I've got some of the original ones I'll show you now. So this is one of the original TMS-6100 mask ROMs here, and they're not just a straight mask ROM actually. They work with a serial interface, serial protocol there to the the 5220 there. So you can't just stick an EPROM in there. And the interesting thing with these is neither of them work actually in the beam, and I don't think there's anything wrong with them as far as I understand. It's a case of these can contain different things. And you can see that code there, CM62031. That indicates perhaps the contents of it. So you've got the part number at the top, and then that subcode there indicates perhaps what's actually on it. So if you recognise that code there, please let me know in the comments below what you think it is. I'm guessing maybe a speak and spell. It might be a European version of Speak and Spell, maybe a French one or German or something, I'm not sure. I've got two of those, they both behave the same way. If I scan through them, which I'll show you in a minute how you can actually play the samples and things that are on there, or the partial samples, bits of sounds and things. You can hear squeaks and squawks, but that's about it. There's no actual clearly understandable sounds and things in there to identify what it is, but I'm guessing Speak and Spell. And these have a tendency to fail. I'm not sure whether it's a MOS component or something, but yeah, they do seem a bit unreliable, and they're quite hard to find. So these chips are still fairly obtainable. They're not super rare, and I think I paid £20 for the kit, and it came with this, and I'll show you the other stuff in a minute, the manual and stuff. It's really nice, the attention to detail that Retro Clinic have gone to present this as a whole kit. But yeah, you can buy these on eBay. There are some arcade spare stockists sell the C version as well. They were quite popular in arcade machines, which I'll talk about a little later, and some pinball tables as well. Some of the Bally pinball tables used them. Now, they were created in 1980 by Texas Instruments, as far as I understand, and I think it used HP, Hewlett-Packard 82967A speech synthesis module. So I think that was technology that was perhaps developed initially by HP. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what it seems to suggest from all the material I've read online. It uses something called pitch-excited linear predictive encoding. So I think what's meant by that in sort of layman's terms, if you think about the speech chips we looked at for the past on the Spectrum and various other systems and things, perhaps works a similar way to that, where you get the certain parts of the sounds that come from the vocal tracts, and they've got like an encoding for those common patterns there. And then the pitch excited bit is a way to perhaps affect those with pitch. So the idea being that you can use those little bits to join up to create words and sentences and stuff, and then use your pitch excitement. Is that really a term I've just made? I'm not sure. Yeah, use your pitch excitement. Excite the pitch to change how it sounds. A man, a woman. You're changing the tone effectively and stuff as well, I guess. And it's interesting how it works compared to some of the other speech chips, actually, like the one I mentioned, the Cora microspeech, for example, just can't do the things this can do. Maybe because of the pitch excited aspect of this, you can get it to sound like the original person, and that's evident in some of the things I'm going to show you a bit later on. You can hear a very clear accent there from whoever the person was that you're trying to, play back a sample from. It's amazing how nostalgic, actually, it sounds, this speech chip. I'm blown away by it, and it kind of made me rush off and develop, well, I'll show you a bit later on, some code to play some of the arcade samples, because they just sound absolutely great. There's so much nostalgia from listening to some of those arcade sound effects, but it's the way this chip makes it sound, I think, that, it gives it a distinct flavour, if you like. It's kind of, I don't know, I would say a bit robotic-ish, but not. It's really hard to explain, but you'll see what I mean when we listen to a few samples later. So early versions of these chips were used in the TI-994A, and Vectrex Rowley has done a really good video on the TI-994A speech, so it's worth checking that out. I'll put a link to that down below. They were also used in Speaking Spells, and as I mentioned, they were used in lots of arcade machines. So they were used in, if you think of all the Atari ones, like Gauntlets, Paperboy, Road Blasters, Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, Roadrunner, 720 Degrees, APB, Vindicators, Escape from Planet Robot Monsters, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, the list goes on. And they were used in a lot of Bally pinball tables as well. So the version that came with this kit is the C. You can't really read the part number very well off there because of the print. Yeah, you can just about see that, CNL. But like I say, there's lots of the straight versions, the original versions on eBay as well. The C followed this initial version, and the C is interchangeable. It improved 2 of the NOP commands, no operation commands. I'm not sure what was wrong with the original ones, but anyway, it improved those. And provided a parallel FIFO to allow variable speed pitch. So I think it was slightly more enhanced, but it is fully backwards compatible with the original. So for the purposes of this in the Beeb, there's no problems. But you might be able to get some better sounds out of that. Now I have been testing some of the arcade speech that I've done here, which I'll show you in a minute, on this chip, and it sounds perfect. But I might just try on this one to see if it sounds any different. Because I think the original arcade boards I've been looking at with regards to speech were using the C chip, actually. So they may have used that variable speed pitch. I don't know. So there is one of these for the BBC that would have originally come with one of these speech chips. So I don't have one of the original mask ROMs there. I've only got the one that came in the kit, which is a TMS-5100 emulator. And you can see it's got a little CPLD on there. And it's emulating the mask ROM there, but the serial interface as well. But the nice thing with this is, not only is it more reliable because it's modern technology, but you can also reprogram the contents of the mask ROM on the fly with the BBC. So what's actually contained on the original mask ROM that would have come with this kit for the BBC is the sound data that would have been recorded from Kenneth Kendall. Now, he was a BBC news reporter back in the sort of 70s, I think. He went on later in his career to host Treasure Hunt. You might be more familiar with that on Channel 4. Sadly, he died in 2012. But Kenneth was the person they recorded the voice of to, for the samples and things inside this. But this kit would have been released in the US as well, because there is a US counterpart, actually. You've got a US ROM. But you can, let's say on the BBC itself, swap over to the US one. So we'll plug the chips in and we'll have a listen. So I'm not sure if the sockets here exist in the same locations on the earlier revisions. This is a Rev 7 Beeb here. What I do know is on a Rev 4 or less, a couple of the pins are around the wrong way. Now I'm not sure how you would easily go about modifying that. You'd perhaps have to cut a trace underneath on the 2 things and then join them up with wires. I'm not sure exactly which connections it is. I'll perhaps stick a pin out here or up here or something so you can see the pin out. Apparently they're the wrong way around, like I say, in prior to and up to maybe Rev 4. But because I've got a Rev 7, I don't need to worry about that. So the mask ROM goes in the left-hand slot on this particular board revision. So we'll just make sure that's aligned. Push it in. That's correct. And we'll go with the one I got from eBay via China. There you go. So pin 1 markings at the top on both of those. And do check you've got them the right way around. The -5 volt, the purple wire that connects to the board down here, that provides, -5 obviously, for the speech chip. I think it's using +5 and -5, so you can get your positive and negative swings on your samples, your sound. I think, anyway. And the sound produced by this is merged with your standard output. So, if you're using a speaker, it'll come out your speaker. In my case, I've got mine switched over to the TV at the moment, so it'll come out the line out. And that's it. There's nothing else to it. Other than flipping those 2 pins around, or the connections on the traces there, if you've got an earlier board revision. So just before we power it up, a quick look here at the instructions and stuff. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see, it comes with a nice instruction leaflet here. Oh, it mentions there, modifying the printed circuit board. Yeah, so issue 2 and issue 3. So that would suggest to me that if you've got issue 4, you're probably alright. 4 onwards, it sounds like it's not an issue. Yeah, I'm not sure what this relates to here. Please post in the comments below if you know more. It's talking about the keyboard here. I'm not sure if maybe it's talking about Rev 1. Maybe there was an issue with the Rev 1 keyboard you needed to do as well. There is a separate connector there. I don't know if you saw it. It's just near those 2 chips there, little pin header. So yeah, I think you can connect that to connect external ROM chips, speech ROM chips. But in this case, I'm not going to be using that. And a quick way to test this with this line of basic here: repeat sound -1, get 0, 0 until 0. So that's you've got a repeat loop until 0 forever, so it'll just repeat, and all you're doing is doing a sound command there. It's the sound -1. The -1 indicates you're using the speech chip, I think. Get, that's the input of the actual sample you want to play, and then the other 2 are probably to do with time or something, I don't know, the two parameters zeros. So we'll test that now, and you'll see, or hear hopefully, it's working. Okay, so we've got our basic command there, press return, and if we press a key,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
So there's an interesting point here I'll make, and that is the speed is perhaps not quite right here.
Q, W, E, R.
And you can affect it. There's a little pot on the PCB, I'll just show you now. So this yellow pot down here you can adjust, and if you're lucky no one's tinkered with it. I would suggest you don't touch it to start with until you've used it and worked out whether it sounds okay or not. But apparently, you can use that to adjust one of the clocks that comes into this, I think. And I think it's got to be set to 160 kilohertz as near as possible. But playing with that affects the pitch. It sounds slightly either higher frequency or lower frequency. It goes faster or slower, depending on how that pot is set. So I've tweaked mine a little bit either way as I've experimented. It sounds okay. Maybe it sounds a little bit fast there, but it sounds okay with other samples and things I've played, as you'll hear. So if I press some more keys.
A, S, D, F, G, H, J, K, L. Stop, on, point, 1000, line, thank, minus, off.
Yeah, so as you can hear, there's loads of sounds in there. And it's got some handy pictures of the PCB here, showing you where to make the mods as well, including the one on the keyboard. And you get this really nice Repro manual, actually. I was blown away with this. I'm really pleased he included this. So this has got loads of programmatic examples here, code examples for BASIC. Now I did start to follow one of these myself, I think it was this one here, to use the CPU to spoon feed sample data, because I got the idea, why not take the ROM from one of the arcade games, e.g. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, etc., and get the Beeb playing those samples. Now I spoke to Tricky on the Stardot forums actually, because he'd already got speech working with Astro Blaster, which I'll show you in a second, just to run it past him what his thoughts were, and lo and behold he said he'd already done it with Star Wars previously. So Tricky kindly provided me with some assembly actually, which made it really super easy for me to complete the things I'm going to show you in a minute. I did start this. I coded both of these. There's 2 code blocks here, I think. Yeah, there's this one here, which contains the data, and there's this bit here, which will play it. And I wrote these in BASIC, and I was just about to go, and then he sent me the assembly. So I swapped over at that point to his assembly, and it just made really light work of it, actually. It would have been really difficult trying to do this within BASIC, because my experience and knowledge of BASIC is limited. I mean, I've done a lot of BASIC over the years, but in terms of BBC BASIC, it's been a long time. I only really did BASIC on the Beeb when I was, I don't know, between 7 and maybe 13 or 14, I think. So yeah, there's lots of other examples and things in here. Everything you would need to know about programming this chip, you know, including the protocol here. Everything's there. It's really, really good. It's a fantastic extra to throw in here. And as you can see towards the back of the seal, I'll zoom in a little bit, but you can see, you know, this is a table at the back in the appendix here of all of the things that are on the ROM there. That Kenneth Kendall has said, you know, 0, 100,000, etc. You know, and there's multiple columns of these. There's probably almost a couple of hundred different things that they got Kenneth to say. You know, you could just get the beep to say these back at any particular point. This is the most common example of a quick test of this chip. So it's sound -1,160,0,0.
Acorn.
And as you can hear, it says Acorn. Now, if I switch over to one of my discs, I've got a basic listing, I think, which I wrote earlier. So we'll do load bbc.bas. I realise it shouldn't have an extension. It's just I had to give it a name. So
This is the Acorn BBC computer.
fantastic. So I just looked at the appendix there to get the decimal value for each of those words there. You know, there's one for this, one for this, one for is, the Acorn, BBC, computer, etc. And just play those in a sequential order there. So you can see it's super easy to get it to speak that way. But you can, as I say, spoon feed previously recorded sample data. Now, production of that sample data is not the easiest thing. Well, it's a little bit easier than it used to be. What you had to use was a program called Qbox Pro, and I think you need Windows 3.1 or Windows 3.11. It perhaps will run on XP as long as you've got the right DLLs. I can't get that running at this stage, so I can't show it you. But there was also a newer program called Blue Wizard, which was created by one of the guys over on Atari Age, Patrick99E99. I'll post a link down below, but you can only run it on a Mac. So he's produced something that does the same thing, you know, which takes a sample. You know, you probably need to convert it in Goldwave or, you know, SoundForge or something. I don't know, one of these, you know, programs there for dealing with WAV files and things. And you need to get the WAV file in the right format. It's got to be 8 bits, I think, and it's got to be a specific frequency. It might be 8 kilohertz. I can't remember. And then I think you can run it through that utility, and it will work out. You know, it'll analyze the sample there, and it'll apply the linear predictive encoding to it. But the net result is, you know, you have a sample that might take, I don't know, let's say your sample's 8K. By the time it's encoded, it could, I kid you not, it could be as small as like 10 bytes or something, or 16 bytes. It could be tiny. So this is what's amazing about this chip. The compression ratio is phenomenal, really. So we'll load one of Tricky's games here, and this makes use of speech. Now, when you first start it, you'll just get a normal sample. So this sample's available to anybody, even if you've not got the speech chip.
Fighter pilots needed in Sector Wars. Play Astro Blaster.
Yeah, so it's just that's just the Beebs standard sound chip playing that, so you have that even without the speech chip. But you'll see at the bottom it says using speech chip with one sideways RAM bank.
Pilots needed in Sector Wars. Play Astro Blaster.
Again, that's not the 5220 doing that, but watch just listen when we start.
Over, invader, sector, player, to battle session.
So all that speech there is coming from the 5220. Now it sounds very robotic, but it's designed to sound robotic. That was the way that the original sounded, I think, on the original arcade machine, and that's what Tricky was going for.
4 ships remaining.
But nevertheless, it's very impressive.
Over, invader, sector, player, to battle session. 4 ships remaining. Warp activated. Extra fuel. 3 ships remaining. Extra fuel. Over, invader sector, 4 player, to battle session. 0 ships remaining, play over. Fighter pilots needed in Sector Wars, play Astro Blaster.
So I'm not familiar with what other software uses the 5220 speech chip actually. There's probably a bunch of applications and games and things out there, I would think. But I am quite new to this. This video really is just going to be a quick overview. But I'll show you, nevertheless, what I've done with the help of Tricky, actually.
Use the force, Luke. Remember, I'm on the leader. Force is strong for this one.
Red 5 standing by. It's Red 5, I'm going in. R220 increase the power. You're all clear, kid.
Let's go, Luke.
Yahoo!
I have you now.
Look at the size of that thing.
Stay in attack formation. The force will be with you, always.
I'm hit, but not bad. R2, see what you can do with it. I lost R2. Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. I can't shake him.
Luke, trust me.
So that's the native sound that would have originally played on an arcade machine coming out the beam. And it does absolutely sound amazing. So I then followed up with Empire Strikes Back.
He will join us or die. The force is with you.
May the force be with you.
Shield doors must be closed.
We have spotted Imperial walkers.
Destroy some kind.
That armor is too strong for blasters. Use your harpoons and tow cables. Go for the legs. It might be our only chance of stopping them.
We picked up something outside the base. Start the evacuation.
Between ourselves, I think Master Luke is in considerable danger.
You are beaten. He could destroy us. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi.
There's a meteorite hit the ground near here.
That's it. The red holes are there. That is the system. And I'm sure Skywalker is with them. Set your course for the Hoth system. General, prepare your troops for a surface attack.
Watch that crossfire, boys.
I want that ship, not excuses. Asteroids do not concern me, Admiral.
Oh, thank goodness we're coming out of the asteroid field. Sir, we just lost the main radio data shield. One more direction and we're done for.
Prepare me to jump the light speed. I think we're in trouble.
Never tell me the odds.
Luke! Don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,725 to 1. This is suicide. There's nowhere to go.
So there was a bit of work actually involved to try and work out which were the sound chips. And there were actually 2. For Empire Strikes Back, there's 2 ROMs there. And some of the samples one of the samples goes over one ROM into another. So there's a point there where, it was causing some issues, I couldn't get it to work, and then I realised it ran over into another ROM. And the other thing that made things more complicated, on the Star Wars ROM, the original one that Tricky looked at, the header at the top of the ROM there was like a little table of the offsets there, the start and end of each sample, if you like. So that was quite a lot easier on the Star Wars one. On Empire Strikes Back, that didn't exist. It may well be on one of the other ROM chips there. Now the architecture was the same as far as I understand, but the code obviously was perhaps running slightly differently on Empire Strikes Back. So it didn't seem to have that little offset, that table there with the offsets in the same place. It may have been somewhere else, I don't know. And the other thing that complicated things is in the protocol there, I think you have like an FF to indicate a reset at the end of each sample. And there was some inconsistency. Some of the samples had like 3 or 4 FFs, and that messed everything up. So it did take quite a while. I did spend a number of hours actually earlier in the week and evenings and things editing the Empire Strikes Back stuff, and I had to create like a hybrid ROM, which was a combination of the 2 ROMs with various bits chopped out and added, and I had to tweak the offsets and stuff. It was a lot of work. So whilst Tricky's code was a really big head start there, most of my time on that was spent with just playing with the ROM. Really, it was that difficult to try and get it working. And it was a similar thing with Return of the Jedi, if not worse. Return of the Jedi had a lot more gaps and things, and there were a few corruptions. And the interesting thing with Return of the Jedi, there were a couple of samples in there that I've never heard. One of them is not used in the game. I think it's someone shouts out, I don't know, enemies in sector something. I can't remember what it is now. You'll hear it and think, I've not heard that in the game. But there's also a swear in there that I am sure never made its presence known in the game. So you could consider it an Easter egg by the developers. It may have come from another film or some other TV thing or something. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say anything. I'll let you listen to it and make your own mind up. It could just be a distortion, but it sounds too clear to me to be classed as a distortion, I think.
The fleet will be here any moment. Wonderful. We are now a part of the fight.
You rebel scum.
3 of them Coming in, 20 degrees. Wait for me! Move closer! Get alongside that one. Leia, wait!
That was too close.
Watch out, squad at .06.
Fucking hey! Go for help! Go get her! Let's go!
The shield is still up. Han, hurry!
Come on, man. Oh, please don't let me down. The security deflector shield will be deactivated when we have confirmation of your code transmission. Leave them to me. I will deal with them myself. Don't worry, my friend's down there. You'll have that shield down on time. And we'll have that shield down. We've got to give him more time.
The shield is down! Commence attack on the discharge rate reactor!
Here goes nothing. Now lock onto the strongest power source. It should be the power generator.
I see them! Stay here!
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Stop him!
Go for the power regulator on the north tower.
So I haven't done any direct captures of this chip. It does sound the same, but the frequency is different. Just have a listen. Now this is the C. This is the original chip that came with the kit, versus the one you've just been listening to. And if I load that,
We will be here any moment. Wonderful. We are now a part of the fight.
can you hear how much slower that is? It's much slower. So the interesting thing there is, obviously you would need to adjust that port based on the chip. So it would suggest to me that actually there's some variation between chips.
I will deal with them myself. Don't worry, my friend's down there. You'll have that shield down on time. And we'll have that shield down. We've got to give him more time.
So I haven't been able to demonstrate much here other than primarily, the playback of some of the arcade samples there. But that's where I think this is quite appealing. I think from the homebrew side of things, we might expect to see more support in homebrew games. Tricky's already done that in one or two of his games. Astro Blaster is certainly one of them. But moving forward, I could see other homebrew developers utilising this chip. I mean, it sounds really cool. There's just something nostalgic about the way it sounds, isn't there, really? But where I started with this was, let's try and play some of the arcade sounds on this chip. And then I started thinking, actually, it'd be really cool if we could modify Star Wars. What you could do is stick your ROM data, the samples, in sideways RAM, have a playback routine in that sideways RAM, modify the original Star Wars game code for the BBC version, so that at various points, when certain things happen, to make calls to that the method there, the playback routine in the sideways RAM to play a specific sample. So I can't imagine that being out of the realms of possibility. I would suspect it would be possible. You could do it with Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, because all three of those games exist for the BBC. Tricky did say that when he got the original Star Wars samples played back, his intentions were exactly the same thing, actually. It's funny, isn't it? People come up with the same ideas for things. If I had £1 for every time someone's thought of the same idea as me, I'd be a millionaire by now. But nevertheless, Tricky had decided he was going to do that. He was going to I think he was going to go a step further and actually develop a new version of Star Wars that ran a bit better. Because the Beeb version of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back aren't very good at all, really. And the Return of the Jedi looks like a Spectrum port to me. It's like monochrome colour. It looks just like the Spectrum version. I suspect they've just lifted and shifted the graphics there from the Spectrum version. It doesn't run very well. I'm sure it could run better if someone rewrote it. But nevertheless, I think those three games were really cool if they utilised the actual samples. But if you do know of any other games and apps and things that utilise the TMS-5220, please post in the comments down below. Around £22, I think it's value for money. I've got the mask ROM here. This isn't the right one, but you get the programmable emulated version of the 6100 as well, so that's really good. I haven't been able to show you swapping the PH-ROM bank over. I mentioned earlier you can swap out for the US version. That is possible. There's a link I'll post down below again. I think the guy's name is Spro, or that's his alias or whatever, Spro, S-P-R-O-W. So I'll post a link down to that. And he has the code there to, dump the contents of the 6100 and write back to it. Not this one, but obviously the emulation version, as well as the US ROM as well. And I have also been able to get samples from Gauntlet, Paperboy and Indiana Jones playing on here as well. So thanks to Tricky for providing the assembly routine there. That really helped me out big time. It saved me a lot of headaches, really. Hopefully you found that interesting. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.
This is the Acorn BBC computer.